Al Goodson.
Pretty tough speech to follow, you know? Let me introduce myself. Al Goodson, been around here for about 50 years. And you might ask, well, what's an old retired man? What's his motive? You know, what's his interest in this? Well, really, I don't think I've got an axe to grind or a dog in this fight. I want to do tell you what I think is best with college. First of all, I want to tell you about labor's commitment. In the late 1890s, at the very first AFL convention, one of the 13 resolutions adopted was calling for a public school system in this nation. Since that time, we've always supported public education through scholarships and other means. In fact, it might surprise some of you to know, it did me when I found out, that the Labor Council some years ago donated to this college about $90,000 to establish a trust fund for scholarships. And all that money came from the sale of the Labor Temple in Galveston, which I was president, Lloyd Chris was secretary, and we sold the building because we couldn't pay the taxes, and it was in a rundown part of town. That money lay in the CDs back when it was paying 10, 12, 14%, and grew. $15,000 finally grew to 90, and that was given to the College of the Mainland. So Labor has a deep commitment to this institution. I want you to know that in the very beginning. Also, I want to commend you upon the facilities. It was I that kind of criticized you last time for having to stand up, and it was very an inappropriate place to hold a meeting publicly. So this is better. It's even air conditioned. That feels good. You know, I experienced one time as a union representative, as president of local, still working in Flint, the possibility of layoffs. And how we solved that, the union itself volunteered to reduce our rate. We went to the company after having a vote, and the whole part-time completely full. If they would not make people off, we would take a small reduction in pay. They bought it. Next morning, I had to go to the credit union and refinance the car, reduce the payments. But we all survived it for the betterment. We took care of the brothers and sisters. They appreciated it. That plant never had a layoff after that. It continued to prosper. That might be one solution here. I don't know. I know the union ain't gonna like to hear this, but maybe if the finances are in dire shape, as you've laid out here, you might want to look at a small decrease in wages across the board, including the president. Right on down. It ought to be a shared proposition. And in return for that, I understand you've got a pretty healthy rainy day fund, several $1 million. You can make up the difference. You may think the sun's shining today in Texas City, Lamar, Hitchcock, Santa Fe, but it's raining at Common. And it may be time to dip into the rainy day fund. Now, that's the only thing I've got to say to you on the layoffs, and I don't think either side's going to buy into it, but you ought to really consider it. But besides that, and that's a very, very important issue you're facing. But I say the number one issue is going to be the selection of the president. Because he's going to set the tone. He's going to be the face of the college. And your decision on who you get to be a president is going to be very, very important. The last three presidents have served here long enough to leave with a very nice severance pay. It's time we found one that's gonna stay. You might even consider a woman for a change. They've got a woman superintendent in Texas City,
Yes.
and, you know, it's about time that maybe they can solve the problems.
There you go. Mr. Gibson, your time is up.
Can you give me just about 2 minutes or a minute?
Another second. How about another second?
Well, I'd say this to you. When you're looking at that guy or lady that you're gonna pick, I know they got to have a PhD in some academic form. But the most important thing is they have a PhD in common sense.
All right.
And you can't get that at college. So my last remarks is just be careful, but do it soon. The mess has got to be cleaned up. Because if I were a candidate and I looked at all the discontent, I don't know whether I'd want to come here.
Thank you.
So you better get together and solve things. Thank you very much.
Ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Rona Smith. Over the past 5.5 years, many employees at COM have been mistreated. They've been victims of racial discrimination, sexual harassment, retaliation, First Amendment rights violations, and more. Imagine the fear or shock that arises when you're just doing your job and a supervisor mistreats or abuses you. You're shocked, you're outraged. What do? Hopefully, there's a fair and expedient grievance process in place to handle just these situations. Well, what do COM employees do when this happens to them? They turn to the union for help. Prior to Dr. Durance's last visit as interim president, COM had a fair grievance policy in place. This is why the number of lawsuits prior to 2009 was very low. However, thanks to Dr. Durance, Dr. Templer, and the board, the grievance policy was changed, so much so that it was actually illegal. It was only after the union filed a lawsuit that was settled by COM that the grievance process was amended in accordance with the law. However, the policy was changed so drastically that in essence, employees really don't have an effective grievance process anymore. So, abused and mistreated employees have continued to come to the union for help. Often they have visited our home, crying and shaking, visibly distraught, knowing that we will listen, care about them, and help them. They have suffered untold trauma as a result of mistreatment at the hands of COM administrators and this board. And since the grievance policy has changed so much, the only recourse they have when the law is being broken is to sue. This is not a light decision for COM employees who sit at our dining room table. This decision impacts their lives, their spouses' lives, their children's lives, and it is gut-wrenching to watch. The change in the grievance policy has directly resulted in the huge number of lawsuits filed over the past few years, which in turn has resulted in very negative publicity for COM, as well as the loss of public trust. Remember, every person sitting at our dining room table has an extended family, friends, acquaintances, church associations, civic affiliations, and more. The message about COM's mistreatment of its employees, as well as its illegal practices, reach out far and wide. And now, most recently, the layoffs and pay cuts will hurt even more people who work at COM and their families. And these decisions were done without consultation or discussion with the employees or with most members of the community. Unfortunately, the human cost continues. Not only should we consider the human cost of these recent actions on the employees, their families, and their futures, but also on the COM students and the college as a whole. Without any warning at all, employees were told that they are now without jobs or without sizable portions of their income. Families will needlessly suffer as a direct result of these decisions. Doctor bills may not be paid and doctor visits not made. College tuition for children may not be paid, and houses may end up in foreclosure. Elderly parents may not have care, and the list continues. The board and Dr. Durrance may erroneously justify their actions as cost savings to the public, but the interim president and the board are wrong about the budget. And in a way, more importantly, they have clearly not considered the ongoing human costs of their actions. Remember, the lives of these employees are interwoven with the lives of the students. Every day, professors and staff impact the students' lives in positive and important ways. Multiply this by many years. You must realize that you are losing far more than you are saving because you cannot put a dollar figure on the human cost. It is too important. I ask you to rescind the layoffs and faculty pay cuts. Develop a new and fair grievance policy. Restore shared governance and give the faculty and staff a meaningful voice in decisions affecting them. Doing this will begin College of the Mainland's climb up from its race to the bottom.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kirkpatrick, please. Richard Kirkpatrick.
Thank you very much. If I signed up to speak, my memory must be failing. Of course, that happens when you get up in your late 70s. As much as I was called to speak, I would say that I support the faculty. I support this college. I was part of the committee that campaigned for its establishment and served a term on the board as trustee and board chair. Let's keep the college running as smoothly as possible, and if we need to raise taxes, don't be afraid to. Thank you.
Lloyd Chris. Lloyd Chris.
Sorry, I didn't hear you back, I'm way back there.
Again, I need to speak up.